Ethel, thank you very much for joining us today. We're
Thank
just
you for having me.
really grateful for all you're doing. You know, Ethel has been having to work remotely. Imagine taking on the role of the new editor and having to do it remotely, and yet she's just jumped right in, and it's just worked, you know, wonderfully. So we're just so grateful for your adaptability and flexibility and just inspiration to move forward. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today too, because as we think about the changes coming to the Sentinel, and especially, we want to really start off, as I say, by talking about why are these changes being made? Because if we don't understand the why, the what's will get misunderstood. The what's will add more to mind's interpretation invariably. And you know, we've already heard some conversations thinking it was about we're trying to save money or we're fascinated with technology, and that really doesn't have anything to do with this. So if we can talk a little bit first about why these changes are being made, and then we'll talk about the what particular changes are happening. We've been giving a lot of thought to this. As a matter of fact, it was almost 3 years ago that the board of directors really had been thinking about the mission of the periodicals, and particularly thinking about the mission of the Sentinel. And we felt, as we prayed and listened about this, that there was a real opportunity to strengthen the watch, the motto Mrs. Eddy puts right on the Sentinel there. You know, she makes it clear that the purpose, we're all familiar with the article and miscellany of what's in a name, where she says that the purpose of the Sentinel was to hold guard over truth, life, and love. And that image of holding guard, that image of being on your watch, whether you're the watch person who's a shepherd out in their field, making sure predators don't come in, whether you're a person in an old town up on the tower, making sure the town is safe that night, or whether you're a soldier on guard duty, making sure that your troops are safe that night. This image of the watch, which of course she takes from Jesus' words, that lift it to a spiritual elevation, that help us see it's really about watching thought. It's about watching and making sure that that Christian scientists understand that it's the atmosphere of thought that really determines not only our own experience, but the experience of the world. And that Christian scientists are needed to defend that watch. And it's quite interesting to talk a little bit about the why here. In the very first issue of the print Sentinel, when it came out back in 1898, the first lead article Hannah wrote, and with a lot of consultation with Mrs. Eddy. And in that, it was interesting. One of the things he said was, just going to read this opening line. He says, "We herewith launch a new publication in connection with our movement. The growing necessities of the situation seem to demand at times a speedier means of communication with the field than our monthly journal affords." So one of the reasons the Sentinel came into being was that Mrs. Eddy felt that the monthly contact was insufficient to meet the demands of the day. Well, that's part of the why that these upcoming changes have to deal with too. We realize that while we all, I think, deeply appreciate the spiritual demonstration and insight of the Sentinel that comes to us each week, that there's an opportunity in today's world to, when needed, be in touch even more frequently. And so we've thought, how can we make the watch of the Sentinel be less a product that comes in the mail once a week, and more an experience of connection in working together, in maintaining that watch together, for ourselves and our own practice and for the world. And so we've really kind of stepped back and said, okay, let's just as an exercise here, if the Sentinel didn't exist as we know it today, how would we build it for today's world, and our current readers and supporters and subscribers? And so that's a lot of the why has to do with how can we strengthen, again, as an experience, not a product, how can we experience a stronger sense of watch together? And that certainly includes, being able to read each other's inspiration, our testimonies of healing, but it also includes, I think, in today's world, an opportunity when needed to, at times, maybe find a way to be in touch even sooner. And so, I was also struck when the Sentinel launched. There's an interesting line from Mackenzie, who was I think he was a trustee at that time, but he said that this will strengthen the bond of unity among the members. That part of the why of this watch is very much a sense of a stronger sense of working together. Because just one other point about this, if you think about the demands of keeping a watch, it really highlights that this is not something you do off on your own. That it sometimes looks like that. When you're on the watch as a guard and doing guard duty, you may feel like you're all alone there keeping a watch. But the fact is, you're doing it in defense of a community. You're keeping your troops safe. You're also doing it with a recognition that after your watch, after you've been on the watch a while, you may need a breather. You have others coming to relieve you of the watch, in a sense. And while we're never letting down our guard or giving up the watch, the fact is, this sense of a community keeping a watch together, helping each other see what needs watching and defending, is very much part of what we feel can be a stronger experience going forward. So that's kind of the why behind this from our perspective. And I'd love to just invite Ethel to jump in here and share kind of what because she kind of joined this effort midstream, and I'd love to hear your sense of what you've been feeling is the why for what we're doing here with the Sentinel going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting just to think about what's been going on just the last several months here, and I think it gives evidence of both that unifying of sort of fellow publishers here, and of keeping watch. You might be interested to know that in the months between March and July, there are about 50% more submissions per month than usual. That's about 300 submissions of testimonies and articles. And there were seven extra Sentinel Watch programs that were produced during that time also. And we found that the content that came in much of it was very ready to go, ready to be in print. I think we found this sense of, there was a devotion of thought. Of course, a lot of people had more time, but, and gratefully they were thinking about the periodicals and the Sentinel in particular during that time. But they were timely. They were generally well written. We found a lot of lead material in what came through. They were from the heart, and they were really out of people's experience. There was a sense that, like, the world needs me or needs this right now, and I've got something to offer. And so it just sort of met all the criteria, met all the things that we're going to speak to the world, not just to our members or people familiar with Christian Science, but it was really addressing that bigger need, and doing it in a really wholehearted kind of way. We've been thinking a great deal about watching and what that takes, and something Scott and I have talked about is that the watch is both, you might say, proactive or preemptive, even, as well as responsive. When Jesus spoke that line about what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. He was, at the temple in Jerusalem and talking to the disciples, and they were very, kind of enthralled with the temple and how magnificent it was. And Jesus was telling them it's not even going to be here at a certain point. And and several times, I think it's 4 or 5 times in just a few verses, he implores them to watch and tells them what to do, what's going to come, and so forth. This is the thing about spiritual sense, is it's telling us what to pay attention to in a deeper sense here and now, but also it is forecasting. It is alerting humankind, really, to what is coming, or what can be staved off, really, through this mental and spiritual work that we can do, that we're bidden to do, and to be publishers of that good news that is going to help mankind, not alone the people who've already embraced Christian Science.
That's great. You know, one of the things, a passage that has been really speaking to me this week as I've been thinking about this conversation is a place in Science and Health where Mrs. Eddy talks about, she uses the word Sentinel, and it's in that section in Footsteps of Truth where she's talking. It's about 10, 12 pages or so, I think, in there, where she's talking about freedom, and this being, the greatest freedom movement the world's known. But she's talking about the opposition that would keep us from spiritually entering into the freedom that the discovery of science enables. And this is on page 225, where she says, the powers of this world will fight and will command their sentinels not to let truth pass the guard until it subscribes to their systems. But science, heeding not the pointed bayonet, marches on. And I've just been so struck by the world sense of what's going on here, is that the sense of the powers of this world will fight and try to impose a kind of slavery, a kind of conformity to materialism. And that's what their sentinels are calling everybody to do, conform to that. And their sentinels being, the materialism of the times, the individual, things that try to keep us from thinking freely, the sense of materia medica. It's just a pretty aggressive onslaught. But the watch that takes place within the mission of the Sentinel by the community of Christian scientists and those awake to spiritual reality is freeing. It's what brings the freedom, because it lifts the whole sense of subscribing to another level. We're not subscribing to a product. We're subscribing to this experience of living within the discovery. And that's really, it's how do we enhance that? That's everything about the changes we can move on now and talk some about the what's, but just know that we want you to understand this is the thinking behind why we're making these changes is because we feel there's an opportunity for us as a movement to have a stronger spiritual watch, and that will be freeing more to ourselves and to the world. So let's talk a little bit now about the what's. Ethel, do you want to talk about some of the changes that are coming up?
Sure. Well, you know that the Sentinel is currently available in 2 forms, which is print and online, as part of JSH Online. And I'll just talk about the print changes first, and these will begin to go into effect as of January of 2021. The print is going to be, instead of having the editorial at the back, for example, it's going to now lead the issue, and it will be actually on what has currently been the cover. The text will begin on the cover. We will also, at this point anyway, planning to start a testimony on the cover as well. And the editorial will fold over onto the inside front cover, and the testimony will carry on later in the testimony section. But we will have probably 3, maybe 4 articles or features behind that in a section we're calling Keeping Watch. And there will be a 1-page Teen Connect or Kids article. The Bible Lens will be there. Of course, it'll be a 2-pager. And then we've got, a number of smaller things that we're looking at that may float around in different spots within the issue. things like letters to the editor. We're bringing back, in some form, Signs of the Times. We're also doing another version of sort of a spiritual short, like is in the journal, which would be called Glimpses of Truth. And there will still be room for poetry, some, lens and light from time to time. So it'll be a mixture of those things.
So part of what I'm hearing here is that one of the things that is not changing with the Sentinel, even though the format and things are going to be different and the appearance will be different, one of the things that's not going to change is that people who are really only subscribing to the Sentinel because they really want that print product in their hand, and that's really all they want, they will still get a full and complete experience in their mailbox each week, printed, that they'll receive. So that's part of it. And yet I was thinking about when you said it, that the editorial is coming to the front, and I think it's worth mentioning that part of the reason that's coming to the front is to help with the why, the sense of, okay, why are we writing this issue now? Why are these? It's including more of a sense of watch within the tone of the opening editorials. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, that is a fair statement. It's also a lead in to the rest of the issue. It's sort of a gatekeeper in a way. It's opening the gate to, let you know what is in the rest of the issue. But it's, and we're already beginning to ask different folks to contribute along a particular line. But it's also going to be able to be more responsive, because we're going to be able to shorten our turnaround time between, for example, when we write an editorial and when it actually ends up in a Sentinel.
I'm glad you raised that, because that's one of the key things here about the changes you're going to see, is that this idea of, right now, if something happens, or they put together an issue to address something going on in the world, it takes many weeks before it arrives in people's mailbox. But part of this shift that's happened is enabling us to drastically shorten that time. That's part of what's behind these changes. But let's talk a little bit more about that. What if even with that shortened time, we need to make sure that getting to our readers there's something is even more urgent than that, because I think that explains a little bit more of some of the other what's that are coming, because they have to do with using more than just print. The print will be complete, but there are other components that this opens up, to utilize that are not just print, but will be connected to the print.
And already is. The online presence of the Sentinel is, they obviously partake of each other. They're not freestanding separate entities. They are not only wedded, they're really birthed from the same source. Right now, we do something that we internally call Onyx, which used to be online exclusive. They're not, these things come up weekly, and they're fresh content usually, and obviously timely. We are in a position, as frankly, the rest of the world is, with the internet just exploding in capacity, I would say, to be able to put not only much more timely content, but more content of a variety of forms. We obviously do it now in terms of written material and also audible, but there will come a time when we will have more video on there as well. There's a redesign going on for the online presence to make it more user-friendly, to have it a little better organized, to make it very easy, for example, to read on a smartphone. Right now, it's more tailored for sort of iPad size or laptop size. There's going to be, a variety of categories like the ones I've just mentioned, and obviously there's the archives as well, but we're looking to be able to respond perhaps in 24 to 48 hours about something in probably audio form to begin with, that it might be a 5-minute or 10-minute podcast that would be among the editors, or it might be with a director, or somebody in the field that really has, really prayed about this and they've got something to share. And there are other forms that may come in during the course of a week, for example, before the print is able to come out. And you will find ultimately that there's going to be more content, understandably, on the website than there will be in print, simply because it's a more malleable format, and we can mount this stuff in, and as soon as we can get it together, we can put it up. So
I just want to, we say that there's already an online experience, but I want to talk a little bit about how different that online experience is going to be. Because right now, if you go online for the online experience, it is largely almost a kind of PDF version of the thing in print. It's an electronic version of what you see in print. But what we're talking about is really more of a shift than that, it seems to me, in that, again, if we think about as a subscriber to the Sentinel, we're subscribing to the experience of being part of this spiritual watch rather than a product. Well, the experience may be that there is something that comes up that necessitates this 24, 48-hour turnaround that Ethel was mentioning. And so as a subscriber, you may get, if you sign up for it, an email or something that says, this is now posted online, and you'll be able to connect to it. And I think about how in my own day-to-day activity, in the course of a day, I may see things on my phone as I'm walking around that are things that have happened that day. And how nice would it be if, in addition to all the news updates I get, there's something, from the periodicals reminding me of part of what's keeping the watch about that point. So there will be an opportunity to have, as Ethel says, audio, video, but more timeliness of keeping that watch together. And I think it might be helpful to talk a little bit about how that experience will be for the person who is a subscriber, because yes, they'll still get their print subscription in the mail, but they will also have this access, for those who want it, to the online. But then there's also this kind of connective tissue between the two. And I think it might be helpful to just talk a little bit about that. I'm just going to, if you don't mind, I'm just going to show. Sure. Hold up the prototype of so this is not the issue. This is a prototype that's under development, but just so you have a sense, this is kind of what the new Sentinel in some respects will look like. You'll see the table of contents is here. You'll see the lead into the editorial here, the testimony that Ethel was talking about here. You still have a picture kind of capturing the theme, But for example, down here in the bottom, you'll see what's called a QR code. It stands for quick response code, because if we said down here, oh, this is also available online, type in this URL, you could do that. But because we want to make sure this is also possible to be a mobile experience, we're making it so that most phones today that have a camera also have the capacity to read this code. I know it doesn't make sense to us as humans, but cameras and smartphones, that's their bread and butter. So like right now, if I hold this up and hold my phone to it, and then I just put on the camera and focus the camera on that QR code. Okay, so I did that. And then across my smartphone here, there's a little banner with a link, and it takes me, as this QR code happens to be tied in to that online version of the Sentinel. So it just takes me to the online version. But that QR code could take me to an audio conversation with Ethel, or a podcast, or a short video, or whatever. But that's something of how that connectivity can work for a more mobile society. Again, not everybody may want to be actively engaged in that. I was kind of a silly metaphor, but I was thinking about how, when you go with your family to, say, to the beach for the day, not everybody who goes necessarily wants to get in the water. Some want to just sit in the sand and play games, or pray, or read a book, or whatever. And others want to just dive in and play in the surf. So it's different ways of experiencing the good you get from being at the beach as a family together. So This is in no way saying you have to be part of the digital part of this in order to get a complete Sentinel experience. It is saying the digital does enable us to strengthen the experience of the Sentinel by having that more immediate connection and being able to make more content available. So thank you all very much for being part of this today. Ethel, thank you so much for sharing and the work you're doing, and especially please give, you know, our thanks to the whole team, because
I will.
boy,
They're fabulous, fabulous
there
team.
are a lot of people. It's always important to remember this is happening largely remotely while the current print schedule is going. So it's like, you know, changing what I think the analogy is, you know, trying to change the engine on a jet as it's flying or something, you know. It's you know, so we really so deeply appreciate the work you and your team are doing.
I will tell them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be with
Thanks
you all.
for all the contributions. We are deeply grateful.
Bye-bye.